Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. Today I want to tell you about the life and career of L. Red Schoendienst. And I briefly met him years and years ago, but I don't quite remember our conversation. However, I also don't have a lot of his cards either. I have, I think, two. His 1950, although I haven't seen that in a while, so I'll have to double check to see if I actually still have that card. I'm pretty sure I do. And then the 1953 tops, and I really like the artwork on this particular card. And for whatever reason, I've never been very successful at trying to get his cards. I don't know why this is, but he is one of those players whose cards have been very difficult for me to acquire, especially his 1948 Bowman rookie. And it's it's not really anything special per se, his Bowman rookie. Um, I have a lot of Hall of Fame rookies in that set, so it's kind of strange because a lot of the quote unquote rookie cards in the 48 Bowman, such as Ralph Kiner and Yogi Berra, those guys have cards, and even Phil Rizzuto, those guys have cards in other sets prior to the 48 Bowman, although the price guides and Beckett at the time, up until today, have said that the 48 Bowman are their rookies. So, if you have a 1941 double play, Phil Rizzuto, you can't have his 48 Bowman being his rookie. Anyway, uh, that's a different story. However, today I wanted to tell you about Red Schoendienst here and his career, and I think it's kind of interesting. Now, my grandmother was a real big fan of the Cardinals back in the 20s and the 30s, and by the time Red Schoendienst showed up in 1945, she was a fan of the Washington Senators because she was down in Washington, D.C. at that time, working for the war effort, and so um, it's something that she had talked a lot about, seeing the Gas House Gang in the 1930s and going to the World Series with her brothers and all that. I think she actually went to two World Series. She definitely went to the 1934 World Series. Sean Dyche is really interesting, and he, I believe, got into the Hall of Fame in 1997. What's really kind of interesting is that his statistics are a lot like Nellie Fox's statistics. And obviously, he's a second baseman. Nellie Fox was a second baseman for the American League. And a lot of people have said, like, okay, so because Sean Dance was in the Hall of Fame, how come Nellie Fox wasn't there? And actually, I think that Nellie Fox was actually the better second baseman if you had to compare the two. Now, his home runs are a little bit better than Nellie Fox, who had 35 home runs during his career. But I think Nellie Fox is also like what 5'7", so it's a little different. And so I went to look at this too, and Nellie Fox, he's not comparable. Okay, his numbers are a little bit better than Alshon Dent. So obviously, with the 1953 tops, chipping on the borders on the bottom are a real concern that you guys want to take a special eye on. So the other thing too is a lot of these I've seen kind of trimmed as well, and you can just kind of like compare them side by side with other cards from the 53, and you'll see if your card is trimmed or not. So if you're looking to grab a couple of 1953 tops to your collection, you want to pay particular attention to the bottoms and the borders here because they can chip real easy. And then the other thing too is Centering can be a huge problem with the 53s as well. And I always like to get another 53 tops and compare them side by side to make sure that the card that I'm purchasing isn't trimmed. And that has been a problem as well. But the artwork is absolutely phenomenal in the 53. And I actually like the 53 a lot better than the 52. And I know in certain circles that will not make me a very popular guy, but 53 is a fantastic year for card collectors, and this is a really great card. The artwork is amazing. So let me get on to Al Schoendienst, and I will get back to you in a minute or two. This is from the St. Louis Dispatch, June 10th, 2018. Many Reds, One Legend by Rick Hummel. Jeff Idelson is president of the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Red Schoendienst's death at age 95 on Wednesday was a loss to many, but it meant that the hall had lost its oldest living member. To Idelson, Schoendienst represented the American dream. He was a tremendous ball player, said Idelson, but beyond that, he was emblematic of the American story where you can grow up with nothing and make the most of an opportunity and parlay that small opportunity into a 7-decade career. That's very much the American dream, and you couldn't have a better person be emblematic of that than Red Schoendienst. Former Commissioner Bud Selig's Red Schoendienst is wearing a Milwaukee Braves uniform in the late 1950s. Selig's family had an auto dealership then in Milwaukee, and he was a rabid Braves fan. Selig, before his group, bought the Milwaukee Brewers and then became commissioner, delighted in the Braves winning the 1957 World Series and going to the World Series again in 1958, sparked by the likes of Henry Aaron, Eddie Matthews, Warren Spahn, and Lou Burdett, with an assist from second baseman they acquired at the June 15th trade deadline from the New York Giants. I'll never forget in 1998, my first year as commissioner, when I was at Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame ceremonies, and Red came over and congratulated me. Eddie Matthews was sitting there, and he said to me, "Buddy, if we don't get Red in 57, we don't win that thing." Now remember, that team had Aaron, Spahn, Burdett, Matthews. But since then, I've talked to Henry Aaron, and he absolutely agrees with that, said Selig. Until you saw Red play every day, you didn't realize how really good he was. Judy Berarda's Red Schoendienst was like her second father. Berarda, director of Major League Administration with the Cardinals, has been with the organization for about half a century. She said, "Red either liked you or he didn't. There was no in between with Red, no gray area. His family was wonderful. My husband John and I were always included in his birthday party. I felt like part of the family. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago and he said, 'I don't want to live.' I said, 'You can't go. This is a better world for us with you in it.' He was like that, but it was like losing my dad." Longtime traveling secretary C.J. Cherry's Red Schoendienst was one who was able to poke fun at himself. Schoendienst told Cherry of a USO tour that took Schoendienst and then managing the Cardinals and umpire Nestor Chilak to Germany in the winter of 1971. Schoendienst bragged that nobody could find him there, but one day a general's aide handed Schoendienst a red phone and said Schoendienst had a call. It was from Cardinals general manager Bing Devine, wanting to know what Schoendienst thought of a potential trade that would send starting pitcher Nelson Briles and outfielder Vic DeValio to Pittsburgh for outfielder Matty Alou. Schoendienst, making sure Chilak was aware of this, gave Devine all the reasons that he thought this would be a bad deal, and when he hung up, he told Chilak proudly, "I've got the power." The next day, Chilak revealed in showing Schoendienst a story in the military newspaper Stars and Stripes that Briles and DeValio had been traded to Pittsburgh for Alou. "Yeah, Red," said Shylock, "you've got some kind of power." James Kohler's Red Schoendienst was one who came across the street at Magnolia and 39th Street in the 1940s to play catch with Kohler and his young friends because the big kids had occupied the diamond on Spring Avenue. Later, we played there in the hope Red would come out again, said Kohler in an email. He often did. I saw Red sitting in the airport one day in the 1980s. I walked up to him and asked him if he remembered those incidences a few years ago. He looked at me and said with a smile, "A few years?" Cardinals coach Jose Unquindo's Red Schoendienst was one he admired for being in uniform so long. Oquendo, who had been with the organization for more than 30 years, knew Schoendienst had doubled that and that Oquendo had no chance to catch him. And he also said he knew he could never handle a fungo bat like Schoendienst. Even when he was 90, said Oquendo, Red was the best. Don Thompson had been with the Cardinals clubhouse guard for decades. His Red Schoendienst is one who signed any and all autograph requests. I never heard him say no, said Thompson. I asked him one day why he didn't shorten his last name to make it easier, and he said, I didn't think I would be around this long. The Red Schoendienst that Cardinals president Bill DeWitt III first knew was as a friend and foil of fellow Hall of Famer Stan Musial. My first exposure to him was when Stan invited me to his golf tournament and Red was playing too, said DeWitt. The interplay between those two was just unbelievable. Stan would needle Red about being cheap, and Red would needle Stan about something that happened or being a bad golfer. Probably most appreciative of having that interplay between the two guys who had spent the better part of 50 years together. In the big picture, DeWitt said, it's probably cliche, but Schoendienst is a link to multiple championship generations that we've had. He played in the 1940s. He managed in the 1960s. He was still around in the 1980s and as a supportive role. And I know that Tony La Russa totally embraced him when he came in the mid 1990s and he was a key advisor to Tony. I think the reason why Red and Tony were such good friends is because, as you know, Tony was an outsider coming to St. Louis, which I think was inherently challenging by its nature. Red was that instant credibility. If you hung out with Red, you've hung out with the St. Louis Cardinals and all of that history. Red would give him baseball advice, but more importantly, Red would give him advice on who is who and what is what in the organization. I think that really helped Tony and his adjustment here. My Red Schoendienst was a man of few words, but you'd better pay attention. One day in spring training, I was sitting next to Schoendienst in a press box private room, and he was prattling on about as a young player and how good I thought he was. Schoendienst listened for 30 to 45 seconds, and when I was done, he uttered only 3 words. Without moving his head towards me, Schoendienst said, he can't play, and that player never made it to the big leagues, nor did I ever bring his name up with Schoendienst again. My Red Schoendienst was a man who would be happy for your success. He volunteered to catch a ceremonial first pitch in Jupiter, Florida, the year I was honored by the Hall of Fame with a writing award, but he participated with a note of caution. Schoendienst, then 84, said, don't be going out there and trying to show how strong your arm is. Just toss the ball to me. My Red Schoendienst was a manager who probably did something that no other manager ever did when meeting the press after the game. Citing deadline pressures, the late Jack Herman of the Globe Democrat used to call down from the press box to Schoendienst's office, and Schoendienst dutifully would answer Herman's post-game questions before moving on to the rest of the media. My Red Schoendienst was a proud father. On a March day in 1989 was when his family gathered at Red's condo in the Isla del Sol community to celebrate the announcement that Schoendienst had been voted into the Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee. One of his daughters, Eileen, had just given birth, and he had never said a word. That the reporter who included that information in the story wrote that Colleen, not Eileen, was the new mother. All the Schoendienst girls had quite a laugh over that one. J.W. McGugan's Red Schoendienst was Al Schoendienst, or Rex Schoendienst. The Post-Dispatch scribe on March 4th, 1945, wrote about a young shortstop named Albert Schoendienst, who said shortstop was the easiest position for him to play in the infield, and that he was recovering from a left eye injury suffered by a nail that had struck it while he had been hammering during his World War II job at the Civilian Conservation Corps camp. Schoendienst was discharged from the Army after the accident, and McGugan wrote, strangely enough, his thatch of red hair has not caused him to be nicknamed Red by any of his baseball friends. His companions call him Rex. Why, he doesn't know or won't say. And now Red Schoendienst has taken that with him to the grave. The Red Schoendienst we all had is much like the Stan Musial we all had until 5 years ago. How lucky are the people in St. Louis, said Selig, to have both Stan Musial and Red Schoendienst. You can't do any better than that on the field or off the field. I thought that was a really interesting take on Red Schoendienst. I wish I would have seen him play, although not against the Red Sox in 1946. Although, you know what? Why not? If I had a flying DeLorean that could travel through time, I probably would see the 1946 World Series, and I'd probably like to see that 46 World Series and see Red Schoendienst play. And it's kind of interesting too that he was on the 1950s Braves team that went to the World Series. And he is a player. I think that if you're not in St. Louis area or a fan of St. Louis Cardinals history, he's someone that I think you could easily lose track of, and he's not really talked about all that much these days. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Red Schoendienst and his 50-year career. Plus, they said 70 years. That's amazing. Here in Boston, we had Johnny Pesky, who had basically a 70-year career in Major League Baseball with the Red Sox. And so Schoendienst is, I think, kind of like that role with the Cardinals. And again, that to me is really interesting. You don't really have that in baseball too often. But again, I wanted to get to Red Schoendienst's career and kind of tell you guys about it. His cards, like I said before, his cards, I don't often get a chance to pick these things up. I said I had two copies of his cards, the 50 and the 53. And actually, I just bought a 1954 Bowman. I've looked at this Bowman. I've looked at a couple of other cards, and for some reason, I just have not been able to get a hold of any other of his cards, specifically his 1948 Bowman rookie. Guys, I hope you enjoy this as much as I did not enjoy reading this because I hate reading out loud. It's awful, and that's something that has always plagued me, reading out loud. But that was a long one, I know. But guys, let me know what you think of Red Schoendienst. If you have any of his cards, any stories about him. I met him briefly years and years ago, and unfortunately, I cannot remember what I said to him, and I can't find those notes. I did interview him quite briefly though, and I knew Stan Musial uh, actually a lot better, and again that Musial was a great guy, a great ball player, a great human being, and I do miss Stan quite a bit, but he was also always there for the fans too. He signed quite a number of autographs, as did Red Schoendienst here. And again, let me know if you guys have any stories of Red or his career, his cards. If there's any favorite cards that you have, this is one of my favorite cards of Red Schoendienst. In fact, and I have to look at more cards and try to find a few other cards aside from his 54 Bowman, which I'm not the biggest fan of the 54 Bowman, to tell you the truth. but I think there's a reason why they kind of like toned down their set in 1954. So give me a like and subscribe so these videos can spider out to other unsuspecting people in the YouTube hobby. And I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.